Welcome, everybody, to the April 2025 meeting of Manhattan Community Board One's Land Use Zoning and Development Committee. First item on our agenda is a discussion of possible resolution with regard to the sale and redevelopment of the city-owned property at 100 Gold. And with us is George James, our sometimes consultant, who's going to help us on this one and has a bit of a presentation for us as we walk through our various considerations. So without further ado, George, would you like to begin?
Great, thanks. All right, so I'm going to share a window and hopefully you're able to see my PowerPoint.
Oh. Well, I'll put mine down. Solidarity. Push it up, George. I don't see it.
All right. Hold on.
There it is.
All right. You can see that now?
Yeah,
yes?
We're good.
All right. Excellent. And I'm going to try to advance it. And you're going to tell me whether it advanced. Yes?
Correct.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. All right. So you all asked me to take a look at the RFP for 100 Gold, and I did. And I have a lot of observations, more than I would typically for an RFP. And so I'm going to ask you to stick with me throughout it. There's the calendar here. Today was the deadline to RSVP for the site visit. And the site tour is later this week. But, you know, broad strokes, proposal is to redevelop 100 Gold Street, the site of HPD and other city agencies. It's a big lot. It's most of the block, and it is currently zoned C64, which allows for up to 12 FAR with affordable housing. The building was constructed in 1970, and it is currently underbuilt. An EDC is called for a mixed income housing, including income restricted housing on site. It's calling for an architectural gateway and activated ground floor uses, and it has produced this illustrative rendering that you can see on the right. Okay, and it outlines these goals: housing production, high quality housing, including income restricted housing.
Didn't know that was part.
Enhance the public realm, integrate new development into the neighborhood, provide ground floor retail and or community facility space, advance the city's sustainability goals, support community development by creating construction and building service jobs that meet 485X wage standards, wage and labor standards, and support city space and services. Maximize the funding through the sale price. Sale price must provide enough to relocate city agencies, and leftover money in excess of the relocation costs may be spent to support additional affordable housing or other public benefits. Those are the goals. Every proposal is expected to produce 2 and up to 3 scenarios. One of the required one is a base case, which is follows 485X, existing zoning, and provides only rental housing. The density case, which is the same as the base case, except it assumes an 18 FAR rezoning. And then finally, an alternative case, which is optional. And it provides for any residential program, including home ownership. So a little explanation on why it's set up this way. 485X, which is which I think most of you know is the new state subsidy that replaced 421A, can't be used for home ownership units in Manhattan. And so if a developer wants condos, they must submit this optional third scenario. In mixed income buildings, affordable units cannot be segregated either by floor or by type of unit. but the top 35% of the floors may be 100% market rate. The idea is that the top floors that have the most value don't have to have affordable units in them or income restricted units in them. But affordable units may be provided in a separate building, and that building can be 100% affordable. So you could have condominium building with 100% market rate, and right next to it, your rental building with affordable housing. That's the way the system is set up, and you could see a proposal like that. And it's likely going to be like that if there's condominium ownership proposed. Now, the most important part of any RFP, I believe, are the criteria that will be used to evaluate the proposals. And these are outlined as follows. Quality and design, quality of the program and design. How well does the proposal meet the project goals? Financial and schedule feasibility. The quality of the financing and, quote, the maximization of the purchase price, unquote. Depth and quality of respondent qualifications and experience. I think that doesn't need any explanation. And then finally, the economic impact, new jobs created, and the extent, quote, the extent to which the project supports local wealth generation, unquote. Use of minority and women-owned business enterprises, city taxes generated, such as real property sales and personal income taxes. And then finally, the projected expenditures, including the purchase price. Again, the one thing that's not mentioned, before I go there, typically RFP criteria are weighted so that the proposers and the public know how the proposals will be evaluated. I took out another EDC RFP that I had on my computer, and normally you see something like this: selection criteria, 25% for this, 30% for that, 10% for this. That's not in this RFP. This RFP just has the criteria, but you don't know how it's going to be weighted. And the missing weights, are an issue, so that neither the public, the applicants, or you know how EDC is going to evaluate these proposals. The emission provides EDC a lot of flexibility in evaluating it because they don't have to hold themselves to any weighting of these criteria. They just listed the criteria without any weights. But it creates this uncertainty among applicants. As somebody who's written proposals for RFPs, this is notable. It's also unclear how the criteria were determined. I'm going to spend a little time talking about this, because the amount and depth of affordability of the units created by this project are not mentioned in the criteria. So affordability is a part of the project goals, and how well the proposals meet the project goals is a criterion, but affordability is never mentioned in the criteria. The criteria do repeatedly, however, refer to the purchase price, as well as, quote, city taxes the project generates, such as real property sales and personal income taxes, unquote.
What I said?
This suggests that affordability is not as important as the amount of money this project is bringing into public coffers, or at least that's what it suggests to me. So, as you probably know, in New York City, public land is often used for affordable housing. It's both city policy and practice. So, Housing New York, the housing document that the de Blasio administration published at the beginning of the term, states, we will identify vacant and underdeveloped publicly controlled properties and maintain an up-to-date census of the properties. We will undertake public outreach to facilitate their development for affordable housing. Where appropriate, the city will finance new mixed-use buildings that also provide commercial amenities and community facilities. In another plan, a housing plan produced by HPD for East Harlem, HPD wrote, while many of these publicly owned properties that are identified in the housing plan serve critical community functions, HPD is actively working with its partner agencies to evaluate potential relocation and incorporation into new affordable housing development on site. HPD will conduct community engagement to inform redevelopment of these properties through an RFP process. That's what, so typically HPD is front and center when these are being done for affordable housing. And again, getting into the criteria, why is affordable housing in this community district or lack of emphasis notable? So New York City Open Data publishes counts of preserved and developed affordable housing. And this table is a summary of all income restricted housing preserved and created in Manhattan from 2014 to 2024, November 2024. And it's organized by community district 1 through 12. Your community district rounds down to 0% of the income restricted housing that has been produced or preserved in Manhattan, 299 units of the 61,000 that were produced. Now, you could say that Lower Manhattan, considering its history, it doesn't have these very large housing projects that need preservation, like in East Harlem and Central Harlem. So we could look at this another way. We could say, well, what if we just look at units that were newly constructed? Income restricted units newly constructed in the community districts, and your community district looks better. It produced 212 units of income restricted housing, or 2% of the Manhattan total in the period. Still in last place, but no longer rounding down to 0%. So you had 4 projects over the past 11 years that produced those 212 units, and they were all, none of them were 100% affordable housing. They were all between 20 and 30%, probably some sort of incentive, either 421A or zoning or both. Okay. Your statement of district needs reads, Community District 1 is not adequately stocked with existing affordable housing, nor does it have many opportunities to generate new affordable units. There are simply not enough emerging units for area residents who are being pushed out of their homes as buildings exit older affordability programs such as Mitchell-Lama or other tax-levied conveyances. That's what your statement of district needs says. So there isn't much affordable housing being produced. You say that you identified that you have a need. And frankly, when I look at the data and read the statement of district needs, it's hard for me to reconcile them with the criteria that are being used to judge 100 Gold Street proposals. As you probably know, the city of New York puts enormous public subsidies into creating and preserving affordable housing, but it puts hardly any of that subsidy to work in your community district. Does equity in the distribution of affordable housing and public subsidy matter? Or should the focus just be about the total number of units? How does this project, 100 Gold Street, affirmatively further fair housing, considering the context and the need? Through its actions, by requiring this public land to pay for the new city offices and not maximizing affordability, EDC has apparently answered those questions. You might have different answers. In fact, EDC presents the area's lack of affordability as a kind of benefit for this proposal. So this is from page 5 of the proposal that they presented at their information session. And it reads, In addition to its proximity to a high concentration of offices, the neighborhood has absorbed a number of new housing developments while maintaining a strong market position poised for continued growth. $5,600 average market rents versus $3,200 in the metro area. So that's a good thing. $5,600 a month rent.
$5,600 is the average rent in our community board?
That's what EDC said in their
Feels high, feels high.
I think it's CD1, not the community board. Is this the district one or community board one?
This is on the EDC fact sheet for this project.
Feel like it'd be
So-
high anywhere.
It should be just CB1.
Yeah.
Could even be just fine.
Battery Park City is the same.
Yeah, I don't know how they defined the area, right? The point I think is that, you know, they're saying that rents are high here. That's good, and that they expect proposals to reflect that.
Because they're not interested in building affordable housing and being closer to the average metro.
Well, I think that you know there is a requirement for some affordability here, at least the 485X amount. So, you know, it's like 25%. Okay, so that was my main point. Is the lack of emphasis on affordable housing in this project. It was really notable. Now, I have other individual, more minor observations to go through. So I think there needs to be some clarity on the public subsidy and funding. So page 34 of the RFP reads, proposals should assume no housing subsidies from city or state, including no city capital. However, EDC may select a project that uses any such subsidy, and EDC reserves the right to make city capital available. I find this incredibly confusing. Should proposals assume public subsidy or not? It says no, and then it says EDC may make city capital available. Under what conditions? And why are they reserving the right to allocate city capital in this way? What cases will they consider the proposals that use public subsidy? There's no explanation. Will proposals that include public subsidy be considered responsive or not? If they don't consider public subsidy, then how would EDC provide that city capital? And then finally, this is my own ignorance here, is EDC is not a city agency, right? They are a public benefit corporation. They have the discretion to make city capital available to private companies with no criteria on how those decisions are being made. I mean, typically government doesn't make decisions like that, right? You have a process. And that's just these two sentences I find incredibly confusing and problematic. Okay. 100 Gold contains 8 city agencies. What's happening to them? The city must follow a process for relocating city agencies, and they need to be included in a citywide statement of needs. And, you know, there needs to be some explanation about where they're expected to go. And, you know, you should know, or at least I think there should be some idea about where these city agencies are going. Will they be broken up into different boroughs? Will they all move together? And how this change is going to impact the community district. All right, remaining sales proceeds. All right, the RFP states, EDC will seek to leverage any remaining sale proceeds after funding real estate and agency relocation costs to provide public benefits, which may include additional affordable housing. EDC or the city should explain what these public benefits will mean, like what's on the table here. Would additional public housing be on site or elsewhere? what other benefits would be considered other than additional affordable housing? How does this decision get made? Does EDC need any input, maybe from the community board or the public? How is affordable housing being prioritized or not over the other benefits, right? It's a kind of like, if we have money left over, we'll do something good with it. Do you want to have a say in what that's going to be? All right, so community priorities and engagement. So there's an appendix J, which shows the result of the pre-RFP community engagement, which is great. But the RFP never references your statement of district needs. I found that kind of curious because other RFPs often refer to neighborhood plans or statements of district needs, and its absence is notable. Parking. The RFP states proposals may include ancillary parking to support residential units and other program elements to the extent needed, given the site's extraordinary access to public transportation. As deemed viable, respondents are strongly encouraged to include an implementation plan to enable electric vehicle charging for on-site parking, an EV implementation plan. So, basic question is, why is parking an element to consider here? Other EDC RFPs, the one in Gansevoort doesn't have parking. Why does EDC consider this a good site for EV charging? And this is really the question, will projects that don't have parking and therefore no EV charging, will they suffer? They might, considering how this is worded.
George, does the parking say that it's what kind of, beyond EV parking, does it say anything? Because I think Rosa and I could make an argument for reclaiming a portion of land not far from that building to provide municipal parking for municipal needs. Does it?
Well, it says ancillary parking, which I assume means accessory parking. Accessory parking is parking for the residents of the building or commercial users of the building.
But it's not parking, for example, for the agency's electric vehicles that they have.
No,
It's
no.
not parking for the Department of Transportation vehicles.
I don't think they were that specific, but George, to answer your question about the EV charging, they actually currently have that on site.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that that's the reason
I
why.
see. I did
Here,
not know that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good point.
Oh, it's all along Franklin Street.
Exactly.
I will, Tammy, to your question, I can tell you that there is a project in East Harlem that was built on a police parking facility. And part of the requirement of the developer was to provide parking to replace all of the police parking. And so that has parking, but it's only for the police and not for any of the residents.
I mean, frankly, that would be very helpful in our community generally, because we have so many agencies and they are taking over all the streets with parking in that specific area, but even beyond. So, but yeah.
I hear that. I mean, and I could give you the details on that one where they actually essentially made parking for the city agency, the police department, in a residential building. It's a good example of that.
That would be great for us to potentially put in a resolution as something that we really want, because they didn't address it, and it's something this community board has complained about for I don't know, 20 years. And there's lots of articles and transportation alternative surveys and articles. There's so much to support the removal of placard vehicles that it would be amazing.
Yeah, and that's not, but again, that's not what it says. It's ancillary parking to support the residential units and other program elements. Yeah, I mean, it's really for the development itself, not the city's need. Which, if you're saying that's what you need down there, you should encourage the modification of this RFP.
Yeah. So.
Okay, as of right development proposals, the RFP states EDC seeks proposals that consider both the as-of-right zoning and proposals that require rezoning. This has got to go through ULURP for disposition anyway. Why are as of right zoning proposals being considered? As of right zoning proposals wouldn't trigger MIH. It's it would just be, 485X. And how will they be evaluated against rezoning proposals, right? So if you have, it's kind of comparing apples and oranges, right? With and without.
Seems like an error more than anything.
No, that seems like we got something done before the administration was over, and so therefore we win, because and if they award the RFP, then they can actually null and void the RFP if they decide to do ULURP and the as of right proposal is no longer valid.
But there's no as of right proposal worth doing on that site, right?
That's not true. It's a fairly decent sized site.
Yeah, and you can do a 12 FAR building as of right on that site. It's got pretty reasonable zoning right now.
Yeah, so it's with ULURP because it's a disposition of city property in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Same
Right.
level, same kind of level?
Well, the ideal
Well-
goal is it's a process.
It is a process, and it's always, if you're doing one ULURP, it's easier to do another one at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of which, the RFP about the senior center ULURP. So the relocation of the senior center from the site to a to be determined location will likely require a site selection action subject to ULURP and is expected to be included in the same ULURP application for the disposition of the site. DCAS and NYC Aging will be the applicants for the site selection action, and the developer will be responsible for coordinating with these agencies leading up and through the duration of the ULURP. And I don't know how important the senior center is to you all, but there are just some basic questions. What are the commitments the city is making to the center and the senior community in Community District 1? Meaning, what is the timeline for the senior center relocation? How long will it be closed? Is the ULURP is running concurrent with 100 Gold land use actions? I think it is. I'm not 100% sure of that. Where is it going? I think this is the most important thing. Can it come back to this site post-construction? May it be relocated somewhere temporarily and be allowed back on site? I don't know.
So are you saying that was what they told us at the meeting? Are you saying that's actually not included in the RFP to reinstate the senior center in that physical location?
I don't believe it is. It says DCAS and NYC Aging will be the applicants for the site selection action, and the developer will be responsible for coordinating with these agencies leading up and through the duration of ULURP. It doesn't say that explicitly. It can.
I think when the original discussion had happened, if I remember correctly, they said that Hamilton Madison House would relocate with the agencies to the new location. Then when we as a community expressed our interest in the senior center remaining or coming back into the new site post-construction, that was something that they would consider as well. But honestly, it would be up to Hamilton Madison House, because obviously there's either two moves or one move.
Exactly.
That's up to them. And my understanding is where they are right now is sort of in the basement and not particularly wonderful. So wherever they go is going to be better, but do they want to come back here? And I got the sense that maybe the answer was yes, just because a lot of the people that are utilizing that facility are actually coming from the north in Chinatown. And so the furthest north you would be on, the site would be this site.
Well, and it's also supposed to serve the people from Hamilton Madison, so if they move the city agencies over to, just for argument's sake, let's say somewhere North Broadway, it's a very far distance.
Yeah, although I thought that they had said that their intention was to take advantage of one of the local Phi-Dye empty buildings,
Because there's so many of them,
Yes.
I see. They did say
Yes.
that, but these
Yes,
are
they-
plans that are
Right.
not tested, and
They
who
actually
knows
thought-
if,
Exactly.
someone's selling any space, like.
Exactly.
When you said they, that was the city, who came?
That was EDC
Yeah, right,
and
EDC, yep.
HPD as in partnership.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Finally, I'm almost done. Finally, There's a question of how does 100 Gold fit with the several planning efforts going on right now? You may have heard the Manhattan Plan, a plan for 100,000 new units of housing, which, hasn't started yet, but 100 Gold has been mentioned as a part of the Manhattan Plan. And question of why are we implementing parts of a plan before that plan effort is even started? City of Yes for Families. This initiative is being launched this year with more details to be announced soon. Stay tuned. And then the Where We Live, NYC 2025, and it is just announced yesterday, I think, their workshops. And Where We Live is the, New York City Fair Housing Plan, and it wants to ensure that both new construction and preservation of affordable homes extend to all the city's community districts. There's a question. If EDC was to wait for Where We Live, would affordable housing at 100 Gold be prioritized? I don't know the answer to that question, but I know that Where We Live is about trying to get more affordable housing in what's considered well-resourced neighborhoods, like Community District 1. And, the last question is like, does 100 Gold do enough considering how poorly the community district has performed, especially when it comes to affordable housing? And you consider the goals of Where We Live. I copied the calendar that they also have in here in terms of what they expect the next phases to be through demolition and construction of 100 Gold. And that's all I have for you.
Usually these RFPs have a date by which they can get all the questions and answer them to clarify stuff. Have we passed that date?
Nope.
Have we still said?
No. Yeah, that's in the front here. Hold on. Final questions are due on April 30th.
How they're gonna evaluate the RFP responses, the percentages of how much do they?
I think
That our aren't we writing?
I think we're writing a resolution and we're asking varieties of
To do
questions
that.
to submit. I think we have a comment section on the community board says this, and here are the answers that the community board wants. I think we should be doing both. Because we should be able to question the problems that are listed about the subsidies, right? Are they subsidies or not? Because it's kind of confusing in there, that should be answered. We should demand that the process that the city agency has spoken officially to talk about community board 1 needs should be reflected in this, as it has been on all other, in many, not all, but many other community boards, right? Our community district needs should be in there. And I do think that with that, we should be asking about agency parking. And we should be we should have a whole list. We can go through point by point.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
Our resolution will be sent back to everyone who wants to participate, right? As part of it.
We are asking EDC to put it as an appendix.
What I find so interesting about the site is it's so big and so developable, but yet there are actually so few real stakeholders on the site that we hear about. I'm close by. It is a terrible walk there. There's nothing going on. You have Pace, there's some private, whatever. You have Southbridge. They're private, whatever. After that, and this small.
On the other side, you have Gotham.
Well, yes, and Gotham, another public, another park that's trying to raise money for themselves. And then this small community of Asian women that I see doing Tai Chi, who I think are the people that we were just referencing.
Well,
For a site like this, there's no one.
But you have the hospital across the street.
Again, where are they? They haven't said anything. They're not speaking out. We don't know what the needs are. You don't have a lot of people from the community here, right? It's weird.
But they did last time.
I know, but
They've been to
12 FAR. How big of a building is it? Okay.
George, 12.
Well, this is an illustrative rendering, but they're
Put it on 120th Street. The room is full of people. I don't understand. I don't know. Put it in Tribeca. You're gonna get a different, we're not hearing a lot. I'm just saying, I'm not hearing a lot from
When
people
we
that don't
did the survey and we had the
probably rightly
outreach,
attended.
in the Q1, we had far more people.
Okay,
Now the RFP is out. This is the community board's business in response to the RFP.
Yeah, and I
no,
think-
I'm with you, I wanna do this, but isn't there like a lack, if it was happening next
Here
to
you
you in FIDA?
I think people, well, I think there's a general apathy that you have to get over in the first place, which is what you're alluding to.
Yeah,
But I think once we get into the actual application phase and you start to see the ULURPs come in and,
we're,
when you get, everybody sees
Okay.
this shiny building, well, that's exciting, that's great, pretty building. But I don't think anybody until they start to realize, oh man, how big is that gonna be? Bigger than Gary and no park and wait, what? And I think that's when you start to see a little bit more engagement on it.
I
Yeah,
also
But
People
also,
pay attention when the bulldozers roll down the street. And
Yeah,
until
and-
that point,
and also, I mean, as much as we can do as a community board, where is EDC in engaging with the community? As far as I can tell, apart from like a couple select small Zooms, they didn't do much.
I also think that FIDI is slightly different in reaction because if you are in a very low density, low height neighborhood
Mhm.
like you are,
Mhm.
then there's a different reaction. I mean, I personally, my bedroom window looks at a building that is, like 60 feet,
Yeah.
60 stories tall. And I look out at my other windows at other buildings that are different from that one that are also, of that height. And so we live, at least in FIDI, I live in
Higher
a very
density.
canyon area. And so to me, that is a part of my neighborhood. And
Right.
I accept that. Otherwise, I wouldn't live there.
The problem is your building has as many units in it, I don't know what building you live in, but let's say you live in 45 John.
Yeah.
You have as many units
Yeah.
as we have in the whole cobblestone area there.
Yeah.
Period. Okay, then you have this big behemoth of a, whatever, I don't even know how that's organized, called Southbridge.
With thousands of
Yeah,
units.
okay,
Yeah.
well, they seem to be a pretty big stakeholder there, but
Yes.
they've been
do they,
here.
are they really, like, what, are they, like, big give backers to the community? I know a lot of our community lives there, but I'm just saying, like,
Yes,
Okay.
they have a huge senior center. They cook meals, they
Great.
do outreach.
great, so
Yeah.
maybe those are the people that need to come and
They
start
were
to.
here.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good.
They were here in the beginning.
Yeah.
They've come, the head of Southbridge,
Great.
absolutely, they have.
Great.
Paul,
Thank you, yes. I think it goes without saying that we are going to make some comments about the need for more affordable housing. So I won't really speak too much to that. I support it. But I also think it's the job of the community board to identify specific public needs and benefits that are needed for the neighborhood. That was mentioned by George, and it certainly is important. And we've all said that, different parts of our neighborhood have specific needs. The east side of the neighborhood specifically needs more open space and community center, if at all possible. Those have been things that have been spoken about at meetings that I've been to. And I know one suggestion that was made was repurpose the new market building, if that could be done. But, we should also make an assessment, seniors, they are a big component of Southbridge. So their needs have to be thought about. Youth as well. And, I guess when we're adding this number of possible new residents, school seats, are the existing schools that are in the neighborhood going to be adequate? So I think we have to put those things specifically in a resolution, and I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
I think Paul's well suited, and Paul, those are the things that we would want to see, right, for noted as part of community needs in the RFP. What other questions do we have that need to be answered?
Well, I guess the impact of the construction on the immediate neighborhood, I know, is something that people who live there have mentioned, and with good cause. You know, that's a huge building that's going to go up. How much noise is it going to create? And then, you know, even the shadows have been mentioned as an issue.
And I mean, I think pursuant to what Alice, what it says, and pursuant to what we're, with the news of what we're seeing, one of the concerns that I'm gonna raise when we look at like the whole conversation is look what happened to the firehouse on Spring Street. Right? And the amount of drilling that happened, that historic landmark is now damaged beyond potentially repair. And the city had to sue Disney when the impacts were already known. So is it because Disney didn't have an independent monitor and they weren't like on top of it? That's,
They did just the baseline thing, probably, and the baseline is
Right.
not good enough, which
Right.
we know, right?
so, I mean, that's something that in this area, we should also be savvy enough because we've already lived through and seen to have that tacked on in the RFP.
So Rosa had her hand up, then Richard, then Michael Kramer, then Alice.
So, just hopping on to Paul's comments, I agree 100% because we've had this conversation before. Affordable housing is still private space, right? Any residential is still private space. And the true community give back is a space that all of us should theoretically be able to enter and utilize. And so that is, I think, leaning more towards something like the community center, which we don't really have here. And even though the new market site and FIDI, Seaport Resiliency, gets touted as a possibility, I think we all recognize that that's an $8 billion plan that's missing $8 billion of funding. So that's probably 20 to 30, possibly even longer away, whereas this building theoretically could be here in a relatively short
Compared,
6,
yeah.
7, 8, yes,
Of course.
in comparison to something like an $8 billion FIDI Seaport Resiliency Plan. So if, you know, we were gonna say if we could have community facility center, active recreation, all year round place in Newmarket in 30 years or here in 7 to 8, I would say, let's do this one, please, before I reach my seniorhood. But I also think that, you know, we need to look at how much parking, and it sort of kills me, but like, to think about like, how does parking fit into this as an opportunity, take so much pressure off of our city streets, which we see everywhere. Literally every street I walk in FIDI, they're so narrow that one car or one school bus stops to let off the kids or to pick up the kids and is honking up and down the street. And that's just the reality of our streets. But if there's an ability to get that parking off and have like a passage lane of traffic plus a drop-off lane, that would be amazing. You know, and then I'm just gonna say the other thing about the affordable housing, if I remember correctly, and George, if you can like pass this package around, that would be really, really helpful. I know that Richard can have photos of the slides, but the actual slides would be awesome. But when, I can't remember if it was EDC or HPD that said at the last meeting that we had, that the profits from the sale of this beyond the actual rehousing of the agencies would actually be funneled back into affordable housing on this specific site. So we asked, can you please clarify, are you talking about, you know, going to affordable housing in the building, like this specific site, in the general sort of community Ward 1 neighborhood, or in the city overall? And they said it would go back specifically into this building, right?
That's
And
not
I
what the
think-
RFP says. That may be their intention, but
Only what they said when they came here for that meeting, the last
Right.
one that we had.
But the problem that we have is it's not in the RFP, so we need to comment about it
So we
and
should
say that.
request that they are
Yes.
specific about that in the
Yes.
RFP.
Can we write that?
Maximize the parking.
So no, sorry, this is the separate subject
Oh,
of affordable
I'm
housing.
sorry,
Basically, they said that if any money
In the
beyond the
actual-
rehousing of the agencies that are currently there would go directly back into funding affordable housing on this site, not outside, not in FIDI, not in the area, not in New York City, but on this site.
And that's not what they.
Extra money.
That one penny extra they have.
No,
Yeah.
so obviously if the site sells for,
Right.
let's say, $5 and it costs them $1 to rehouse
Got
the existing agencies, right? Then $4 would be funneled back into affordable housing on this site. That was what they said, and we have the tape to prove it.
But what the RFP says
They let
is that
that
the
go.
money goes back to the general city and the city spends it anywhere they want.
No, they specifically
It doesn't
said that.
quite, yeah, it's not quite that way. It says that it will go back to other benefits, which could include affordable housing,
But
or other benefits.
This site.
So just so that we are clear, then we are asking for them to reaffirm that as part of our questions via our resolution, right?
yes,
Okay. But I'm just sharing what was at the last meeting in case anybody was not at the last meeting, because we did have that question because it was fuzzy. And they also said for 485X that the absolute minimum affordable housing percentage was 25%. Because a lot of people were saying, well, there's no guarantee of any affordable housing here. They were like, no, it's minimum 25%.
Yes.
Let me just say, I'm not used for you.
When you say it's recorded, is there somewhere can
They have to.
watch our two?
Yeah.
Every one of our things?
yeah.
Just wanted to know that.
Turning to Richard for a second, I just want to
That's what.
preview this a little bit because we're putting together a good fulsome list. That's awesome. And of course, I'll watch the video to make sure we're capturing it all, but this is one of those that I will try to get on drafting ASAP so that we can circulate the draft around. There's, if there are additional points that I think I've missed, we can put them in there. I don't know whether we formally voted on them here or not. I think it's fine. Okay.
My hand has been up for a while.
Oh, Joe, hang on. So, we're gonna go to Richard and then,
I just have a process question and to understand what our purpose is here. The RFP is out. The criteria, such as they are, have been established in that. Developers are working on it.
Right.
What do our questions now actually do? What is it that we can accomplish? They can't change the RFP, presumably.
They can.
What can,
They Well, can clarify the question
Okay.
and answer.
I'm empty.
They can clarify and amend and/or amend if they choose. By pushing the questions out and asking for answers, and having it out there, it also helps for the developers to understand the
Right.
positions of the community and understand what they're coming for.
so
So
this goes on the project site is something that.
we,
If one developer wants to do something for us, he knows what.
we asked them to put it on the project site. We asked them publicly, and we understood that it couldn't be included in the RFP, but it could be as part of the appendices.
Okay.
George, is that comport with your understanding?
Yeah, they can, that's my understanding. They can amend it. They already have amended it twice. And they are free to amend and then extend, right? It's up to them.
Okay, and then I wonder, could George get his presentation up on the website that we could access now? Is that possible?
It will be in the meeting materials.
And I'd love to be able to get it now,
Potentially.
if possible.
This
Ah.
very moment.
If possible.
George, if you send it to me, I can do it this very moment.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so I can get out of this and I will send it to you.
Okay, following the order of the people who were called earlier. So we still have Michael Kramer, Alice, and then Joe.
Okay, I have three comments. The first comment is that we didn't see the sign-in sheet for this info session. I can assure you that it's 3 pages long and it's all the power players in real estate in New York City. So that's my first comment. My second comment is a question to George about air rights. Now, let me posit 2 different scenarios to you, or actually 3. One is that there are potentially some unused air rights from Southbridge, which could obviously be easily transferred to this site. Depending on how much they have, it could even retire their mortgage. Do you see that as a possibility? And would that just make the building bigger? And if the building was bigger, does it matter if it's 90 stories or 100 stories?
Okay, so I mean that's a really interesting question. I don't think it was anticipated that the that any applicant would acquire unused development rights. But yes, to answer your question is would it make the building bigger? It absolutely would. And you could theoretically transfer unused development rights to this site. I don't know how much they have. That is an open question. But if they have some, it could in theory be used. And here's the thing is that I don't know if they could include that in a proposal if they didn't have an option already in place to get them. And so, you know, that would require Southbridge signing on to it, and that would probably mean some of you have heard about it by now.
Well, in this particular case, you know, would that be part of our response, either in encouraging or discouraging? And then the second question is, under the city of yes, could we take those lovely unused air rights on Pier 17 and transfer them to this site?
Oh, oh, okay. So I don't think they would reach this far. I'd have to look at a block map. I think according to the new rules, they would not reach this far, but I wouldn't bet on it. I'd have to look at that.
Okay, and then my last question. So there is a question about whether this should be included in the community board response. And my last question is really following up on what Paul said and taking a little bit of an issue with what Rosa said. You know, we shouldn't be competing for a community center, and we shouldn't be giving out inaccurate information. We don't know it's going to take 30 years to do the new market site. That's just speculation. The point I guess I'm trying to make is that can the community, in this case, do you see a scenario where the community benefits can go a half a mile? And if they go a half a mile, does that get us to the waterfront? And if it gets us to the waterfront, it could be a community center, it could be improvements to the bikeway, walkway, Esplanade, it could be a number of things.
I think we should include the thing about like, what are the maximized, like, is there a maximum amount of floor area that this like site can receive? And if there's some sort of law that puts that in some sort of perspective for us. And not just some wishy-washy like thing. What is the maximum amount of floor area that this site is capable of receiving?
Is that
Simple
image
question.
that's shown 18 FAR? George, do you know if it's 18 FAR?
Well, if it gets rezoned, it would be 18 FAR. Now, if what Michael is,
That the city release.
Right,
is
they
it
might not
18?
have.
That's already double the size of
Yeah,
everything that's around.
Unless someone wants to ask it a different way, I feel like that's the most kind of direct way, and then if they say the FAR and we just do some quick math, we know the max and take some mechanical deductions, blah, blah, blah.
Jason, remember that there are no height limits when you're piling the air rights on
I
top.
understand, and there may very well be no FAR limit, but I have to hear him say that.
We can ask about the unused development rights as well. George, any further on the points Michael raised, or can we move to Alice?
you know, I can't answer the question about the transferring floor area from Pier 17 right now. I think it's too far, Michael. The only
With the city of yes.
yeah, no, even with the city of yes, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's too far. It is too far. It can't get all that way.
Remember, it's a large-scale general district, right across the
They
street.
want.
Well, okay, so if you're talking,
Right
I have
across
to
the
give that some
street,
thought,
and
Michael. I
it's a
can't do it.
historic district that they're transferring from.
But you got to do it from individual landmarks, not historic districts.
Right, are there any individual landmarks that are nearby, Michael or George? Do you, I can't think.
Sure.
I can look.
There are
Yeah.
historic ships that are landmarks.
Yeah, that he's saying there's trying to make a vehicle for that, but, okay. Cool.
Okay, Alice?
Yeah, I was, a while ago, but I was just gonna, support the idea of identifying a lot of these things that you're doing already, Patrick, in a resolution and making sure that we do go back to the previous meeting where we have very long list of sort of ideas about what are defined as community amenities. And I think we shouldn't be in a phase of negotiation. I mean, I think there's certain things that this community board are adamant about in terms of affordable housing. I mean, I don't know, the majority, I would say, that when we vote on these things, and I think we have to have a definition of affordability, you know, deeply affordable versus affordable. What does that 25% really mean? I think that should be embedded in here somewhere. And I think the very specific amenities that are not necessarily at the site specific, but in the area, we talked about the landscaping in the areas around, the supportive parks. I mean, this is the moment to make some contribution to the community in the bigger picture. And I think the two things I always hear about are our need for open space, recreation, and deeply affordable housing. And I just hope that that sort of gets highlighted in whatever way, and but not to forget what we've already done. That's it. Thanks. Oh, and one thing, I looked up the statistics on the rent and the Manhattan Borough President, and you're not gonna believe this. So it varies, but in the financial district, it is approximately $4,400 a month.
Quite a bit low.
And the average rent in Tribeca can soar to around $11,995.
That's why you live in Tribeca. The high rents.
So anyway, just for the record, thanks.
Okay, Joe, and then Betty.
Oh, thank you, Paul, for mentioning all those things. I won't go over that, but they always talked about, the city talked about making a profit from selling the building and then using that for amenities. I'm not so sure the city's gonna make a profit.
I agree with you.
And then what?
Or they'll find a way to not show a profit. I mean, that's part of like profiteering, right? Not showing a
Yes,
profit
maybe, but they.
on paper, you know?
But I think we should take into consideration that possibility. What if they don't show a profit? What benefits will we get?
Right, benefits have to come first, before the profit line. No? Is that what you're saying,
Well,
Joe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that should be highlighted in whatever we respond. It should be that our benefits should become first. And
Yeah,
foremost.
it's going to be a new administration by the time they figure this out.
We may not be alive when this building goes up, take 10 years. That's all.
Thanks, Joe, I got it. Betty?
Yes, hi. I want to talk a little bit about something that I haven't heard mentioned already, but that is minimizing the development, actually minimizing the pressure on the streets around it, such as having, I didn't hear any mention the RFP, but maybe it could be part of the selection process, the various development ideas, but things like a loading dock, which is a way of not having to have all these moving vans around, trash compactors, so there isn't some stuff packed on the street. A bike room for the residents, because there are going to have to be some transportation alternatives for them. And this is going to be a large.
Those are all required. Those are all as of right, Betty.
But we should put an asterisk next to them, because they're as of right, that's the minimum.
No, there's a requirement.
City of Yes changed a bit of that.
Yeah, it's required under City of Yes to have bike rooms, trash rooms, loading
Yeah.
dock berths for
Right.
buildings of a certain size. But that's the bare minimum, and I think maybe I don't want to speak for anybody, but maybe the bare minimum is not good enough for us. Betty might say that, and I think.
No, I
it's
think
not.
Betty raises a really fair question. It's something we advocated for and was pretty easily agreed to with Five World Trade Center. That we get
Yeah.
all that stuff off the street, the garbage, the movements, the move-outs.
Yeah.
All that nonsense takes place somewhere else off the street of the building, and
Yeah.
they were fine with that. So Betty, that's great. We'll list that question in there as well.
What else is on Betty's list? That she was thinking about, I mean, other than pressure on the streets, like what else?
I think people have
Thinking
lots of good ideas. I was just adding things about the streets. That's all. I'm done.
Last month.
I would just wonder also in, just thinking about it, in looking a little bit more closely at the jail recently, whatever's going on underground, we really need to be conscious of, and particularly vis-a-vis the city's commitment to resiliency and our own commitment as a board to thoughts about potentially using that for storage tanks, right, or retention tanks, to really look carefully at what's going on the cellar levels, if they're going to be, are they going to excavate, and if so, is that a possibility? Rather than giving it over, for example, automatically to parking, which I'm sure will come up, something to be considered in the RFP as ways to potentially utilize a cellar area.
And I want to add one thing.
Ben?
thing if I may, which is, as we've seen with the jail and other sites, there are issues around protection of the neighboring community, separate monitoring capability, noise, pollution.
I have that within what Paul was talking about.
So independent community monitoring capability.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna wish list going, y'all. Are we good?
Yes, one more question.
Okay.
What's considered a separate building for the, I think there was a third option, which said that the condo can be a separate building.
That's right.
Do we know what do they consider a separate building? Can they say the whole podium is a separate building and the towers are a separate building?
No, not,
But what,
it's
how?
attached, it has to be separate, and two buildings must be detached from each other, no connection.
So then that whole thing, the rendering is all one building.
Sure, looks like one
I
building.
guess the rendering is just an idea.
But the definition of a building is detached structure from another structure.
But when you take a look at the site, they could have it as two separate structures connected with a park.
Yeah, that's two buildings.
Yeah, they could make a way to have two buildings.
What, yes,
Like a
you could
plaza,
find
yeah.
that way.
Yeah, the site's large enough to be
Yeah.
able to accommodate.
Sure, but it wouldn't be a tower on base, what you're saying. That illustrative thing is one building. No matter if it's a tower on a base, that's.
So you're looking something, I mean, I think you're trying to avoid something that was like at Two Bridges where they had the elegant tower and the poor building. Right, that was made with.
Well, you can't do that from the top down.
Yeah.
You'd be saying you can't have a corridor, you can't
Yeah.
separate floor wise, height wise.
It's odd that you could have the top 35%.
Right.
Market rate. Isn't that really written as a corridor in effect?
Probably, it's
I
just the
think-
way we're doing it.
I think what they're saying is that whether you're on the 60th floor or the 40th floor, it's like,
Right,
you're gonna be doing okay on the 40th floor.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of vertical living, I guess. There's probably no other way to really, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And can we make sure we have George's questions, all of these extraordinary
Yeah, really.
questions within our resolution somehow identified and
We got a
asked for an
60-page
answer?
resolution.
Well, I mean, I didn't,
Yeah.
everyone, but
Stormy Normandy here.
critical questions.
I guess one clarification that I have related to the number of affordable housing units is that if there is the ability to separate out a condo building versus a rental building, then does the affordability requirement of minimum 25% plus only apply to the remaining of like the rental building, or does it apply to the entire development? So
The
let's say
entire
it's
development.
1,000
Yeah.
So it's 1,000, or let's say it's 2,000 units and then 1,000 rental, 1,000 condo, then the affordable housing requirement would span over 2,000 units, right? So
Yeah,
it would be
that's right.
20%.
That's right. It doesn't relieve you of
Okay.
any affordability in
Right.
terms of that.
The problem with that is that the condo units are usually much bigger than rental units. So there'd be fewer of them, so a smaller percentage.
All right, I want to try to close this out. We're going on an hour and I'm breaking my own rules. So, I'm gonna call the question on a proposed vote on, a resolution that will, be designed for EDC to consider in amending, its current RFP, or at least to, make these questions available, publicly available to those considering responding to the RFP, whether through the project website or otherwise, so that they can understand the community's concern. And then we're asking EDC to include these specifically as an appendix to the RFP if possible. The laundry list of questions, both from George's presentation and the ones that we've talked about tonight, and not going to recap them all, but trust me, they'll all be in there because we have great video recording of it, and we've got George's and my notes as well. And it'll be passed around to everybody in draft form before it goes to the full board. So with that, I think we captured it all. So I'll call the question and.
Second.
Great. So all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? recusals, any abstentions here? None? It passes. All right, thank you, guys.
Oh, I'm a
Thanks, George.
recusal. Wait, Patrick, I'm a recusal.
Okay.
Laura.
And you'll be able to count the tally. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
George, thanks very much, George. Welcome to hanging out with those.
Thank you, George.
Okay. Bye now.
But it doesn't look right. Next up is an update on 77th Street, 70 Water Street, Pop's demolition. I'm going to ask Alice to kind of walk us through this. Everybody has or should have access to a copy of the resolution that we adopted in February of last year, which was specific to this site, but also just swear around to everybody or not.
Yeah, I think everybody has.
Okay.
that.
Sorry. But which effectively asked that, and this was at the behest of the folks from DCP at the time, because there is no formal requirement that the OB notify DCP of demolition that would occur in POPs. So we asked that the city agencies use common sense and start talking to each other, but we're going to hear clearly that hasn't happened.
Well, it's even more egregious because this was to an arcade, which is a little different than a plaza. So, do you have the pictures I sent you?
This is the one that had the art
The
installations.
Yeah, that way people will know.
Yes.
Looking at it.
And now.
I sent you earlier, that there's a series of six, yeah, right, yeah, just everybody will. So I'm just gonna, okay, well, maybe that's the end of the story, but, that's the plaza of about 2 weeks ago. Can you pull up the earlier ones? That's just showing you the.
Yeah, the current condition.
Well, that is current,
Yes,
that is
showing us the
existing.
current, and the old
Yeah.
beautiful condition is
So I'm
gone.
just gonna try to, people to sort of
Yeah.
remember what we looked at. Okay, well, that's actually an interesting plan, the first one, but, oops.
Oh, I love that.
I know, there's some good shots, right,
Go
but
back
we're
again.
dancing around there. Well, that, okay, just so you know, this was no small thing. That is John Lennon Yoko in that plaza, in front of that sculpture, the orange disc.
And there was a.
And every piece of art has been removed, which is, nothing was reviewed, and that is completely against the law, but from what I understand. And so we were asking what happened to the art and what happened to the plaza. So the first thing which are back last February is the story of the arcade itself, this huge area underneath what you're looking at with the art. This was completely destroyed. None of us knew about it. We wrote this resolution, some of us were very upset, and they claimed that, well, they didn't know about the demolition permit, the development. DCP, Department of City Planning, did not know about the demolition permit. And the owner had gone directly for demolition, and DOB honored it. And this is why we wrote saying, gee, maybe DOB should work hand in hand with DCP, and DCP should have oversight. So we've acknowledged this, we've asked about this site many, many times. It's our biggest POPs downtown. So the next slide, whatever we've got on.
It's our biggest downtown.
Open POP, yeah. Except for the interior POP at Maiden Lane, yep. Yeah, look at the scale of this thing.
Yeah, what about the one all the way down the end of Water Street, that red building? Oh.
Well, anyway, I think I'm right on that, but anyway, the actual plaza is the area in green. This is the original drawing. This is by a very well-known landscape architect, A.E. By. This was a revered and superb landscape that was very important, that a lot of people have been lobbying to save, but be that as it may, it's gone. So that's the original drawing with Richard Roth, who was the architect, next drawing. And you'll see that was built. There it is. You'll see the trees on the right, and you're seeing the arcade in the center in the darker color. That's the existing arcade. That's all open. And then the trees are the plaza on the right, okay, where you see trees in white. That is what shouldn't have been touched without community board review. And it requires chairperson's certification in order to modify that. And we've asked DCP, and there seems to be no record yet that they can find of any chairperson's certification. And when Tammy, Zach, and I asked for an update, we were told there's nothing in the ZAP portal on this application. But interestingly, somebody I know who happens to be Richard Roth's daughter was doing a lecture about this building, and she saw that the POPs had been demolished. And she's the one that sent me the picture that you see. I went down to confirm it's true, and that's where we are today. And I wanted to provide this update because we are very upset to be losing so much important public space and this done, not just the space itself, but also all the art gone. Right, what do we do? Well, I don't know what we do. We bring it to everyone's attention, and hopefully the Department of City Planning will get back to us with some sort of remedy to allow that this plaza gets reinstated.
Does anyone ever get anyone's attention by filing like a lawsuit?
Yes.
I mean, this is
As an architect, as an unregistered architect, I can't do that. Maybe as a registered architect, you could do that.
Well, maybe as a lawyer, we could, but I think it's a real problem. And this is a really
It's a
major
mistake,
problem.
a problem that's too much.
Of public property,
And
community.
I don't know.
And
if, like,
Department of City
the
Planning,
board as a
nothing about it.
city, as an agency, has standing to, for example, file an Article 78 or to do something along those lines. That's a really crazy question that we actually we might have to do something as a community because we've gone to the city agencies, we've asked, we've waved all the advocacy flags that we're supposed to, and the law was just flat out ignored.
So it's a real problem. It's not just here, it's the Wild West down in the financial district. I'm sure you can attest to everything turning residential. Well, everything's getting modified. And this is an example. This was a commercial building, recently was sold and it's being, turned over into residential. And that developer just goes ahead with his plans, wants to get rid of whatever he wants to get rid of, and he does it unbeknownst to the community, unbeknownst to the Department of City Planning, evidently, at least we've been told. So I'm not quite sure what we do, but this is not alone. 175 Water is another building that's got a big arcade that again has been completely cordoned off and being used for storage. These are public spaces and these are our spaces, so you gotta fight for them.
Was this
And
a
that's the
self-certified
update.
DOB application? Self-certified?
For
Do you
the
know?
demolition, I don't know.
That person
It-
could be sued immediately.
It
It
was.
was. But that's what they're gonna tell you the problem
Well,
is.
the
The guy who's self-certified. I'm saying just I'm not saying to do it, but if you self-certify something as a professional, the DOB is gonna wash their hands of it. So it's gonna come back to the applicant. That's where I would go with it. Am I wrong? Does anyone know how it works?
Has to say.
What do you
It's
think?
an issue of standing, who can actually sue the architect, it's usually the architect's client, that would be.
Well, whatever. He put his seal on it. If it's self-certified and he didn't have permission to demolish it, he's gonna be.
Not any Joe off the street can go and.
So what would be your,
Take a
I mean,
job.
are there any other thoughts from anybody? Well, we as a community do these spaces.
Does the public have standing?
The art, we asked, we don't know what happened to it.
And to be clear, for the tape, I don't.
That's right.
Don't, please don't.
So I guess the question is whether or not we would go to the public advocate and see if the public advocate's office would help us.
So that was a great route, and keep in mind, I mean, our former controller did this audit a few
Yeah.
years ago
Yeah.
of pop spaces, which was the first time I think we came to realize that DOB is the agency charged with monitoring compliance and potential violations, but we know they don't do anything. So the question is, then who do you get to spur them?
It's the DOB, you mean for demolition, but.
Well,
being
buildings
used
and sites.
for-
I think he's right.
No, it's DOB.
Yeah.
DOB is charged with enforcement
Of zoning laws and things like that.
Oh, I see
It's
what
true.
you're saying.
You know what I mean, right? He's
But-
supposed to know the
So
zoning,
if somebody's violating public space and cordoning it off, it's a DOB.
yeah.
Right, but this required a chairperson certification to touch the space and modify it, so it starts at Department of City
I mean,
Planning.
else, what if someone by mistake didn't have a landmarks, like by mistake a landmark was left off, the checkbox, and you go to DOB, you self-certify it, but it goes in, and then you demolish part of it. You know, it's almost like we're in the same spot. It's not the same, like, way into the wrong way in, but that would be a tough
Yeah, but
situation.
It seems to me like this is the kind of thing, like a chair's letter to the public advocate's
Yeah,
office,
I like
maybe that phone call if at a staff level.
Would say borough president also in city council?
Well, Marte is aware of it and definitely was looking into it on our behalf, and he did write TCP, and this, what we got as a response was they were looking into it, that they knew it was, chairperson certification was required by law, and they cite the zoning, but they didn't know what had happened. I mean, we didn't get any follow-up, and that's going back 2 weeks. We would hope to have it for tonight, but we don't. So I think that,
The more squeaky wheels, the better.
Yeah. Why don't we make a little small
I know.
subcommittee of people that can just do these 5 tasks and not bore anybody or maybe another committee member from another thing wants to do it. we gotta follow up with these 4 agencies. Time is of the essence, this is a ridiculous thing.
So here's the
You
fun
know?
thing that it goes to it. What we've sort of started to see is when you get down that road, what you start seeing based on my experience from where I sit is Alice is 100% right. And because she found it and she saw the hole, we will not get any answers now. I hate to say it that way, but the city will all of a sudden start to be like, and close the door on us. So the only way that we can do it is probably a letter from the chair sent by Zach, going to the public advocate's office, asking for the public advocate to help us. So it's like, not just one letter, it's one letter to the Department of
Yeah,
Buildings.
because we send that same. right,
It's
to
one
fair-
letter to the public advocate to ask, it's a letter to, we have to find somebody who could go see who, if it was self-certified.
Yeah, well, we can do that little thing. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
we-
I didn't
we-
look, but I can look easy.
Yeah,
I would
so
like
I
to
need-
help in your little adventure.
Perfect, so
We don't necessarily have
If
to make it
you
a
can be the
zoning.
one to help
I'd
take a
love
look
that,
at,
I'd love that.
that's,
Who we can send the letter to, who we can address it to, and then. we
did
can-
somebody self-certify it?
Right,
Who is
yeah,
that person?
yeah.
Because that person needs to be called
We'll
in.
draft a little something together
Perfect.
offline, right? This is terrible, honestly, I cannot.
And this is amazing, Michael.
The only
Kramer
orders
just
that
sent
we
me.
have. No, that's.
Oh, there are many pops, but I
Right.
mean, that have some smaller issues, but the ones that are wrong, that are, I think.
Well, there's separate issues, right? Closing the door, you need to get some certificate to go to DOB for these other ones, should someone want to demolish it, right? This one's.
The biggest thing is the city agency is working on our behalf. And so when we asked DCP to come and provide us simple information as to what happened, we should be able to get it. Zach or Tammy, when they make that call, even me, when I write my letters, but, we don't. And I think that's a real problem, and it is a concern. So I think the public advocate route, I mean, with all due respect to Department of State Planning, they have a lot to do, I understand that, but these are major issues. These are buildings that got to build way up, and we got these little widgets of space, and this one happened to be a very beautiful
It's a
space.
revolving door over there at BCP. 100 different men and women I've seen represented these things. They come and go,
But it-
never
It
around.
harkens back to the conversations we had about City of Yes, and wait till you see what one of our interns from the Fund for the City of New York, one of our urban fellows. I mean, I'm not gonna try and spill everything, but her analysis of open space and analysis of population is sort of frightening. Because, I mean, we don't wanna be living in tuna cans with no place to go outside the buildings. And every pops that they demolish and every bit of public space they take away, it's almost like they add 10 more people who live here. So you're not actually making it that vibrant 24/7, really fantastic city that we're advertising. We want it to be that, but then we need to have an eye and keep our stuff.
And just one other thing on this space, when I spoke to some of the guys, the contractors who were there, it sounds like they are going to be enclosing the entire arcade now.
I'm sorry, just as a permanent thing?
That's right. Which they are allowed to do with the Water Street text amendment, but that open space with the garden, Zach, if you just take that
Allowed to
picture, they are going to make that now. We fought it, like crazy a few years ago when it came up and the developer backed off. He was the great, the designer. But then now the new owner wants to bring it back. I think this was what I heard. I don't know. if it's-
Yeah, that could, right.
But anyway, there you go. So there we go. That's the history of.
Alice, I feel
Okay.
like the last 4
Thank
years
you.
that I've been here, we've had this discussion over and over again to varying degrees. Maybe it's not just
Getting
the
into
one
the,
project, it's actually a larger sort of effort with the public advocate to actually look at POPs in general down here and the sort of slow erosion of public space to become privatized and how we can sort of address that. Because it's like, it's one after the other, at least
Yeah.
what I've been hearing over the last 4 years. So maybe this is a trend and not just a.
It is a trend.
We started this trend with that amendment.
We asked, we asked DCP about it because we did say that we were seeing this as a trend. And they assured us it was a per project decision.
And that if anything were going on, it would be in the ZAP portal. And I poured over the ZAP portal on every single property. Not one thing.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Terrible portal.
so, yes, we see it, you see it. And for some reason, the city doesn't. I'm not really sure
Right, so
how.
maybe we need to make a larger scale analysis of what we've lost so far and what has not been given back.
Is there a plan already somewhere?
We have all this, I mean,
We have
and what Patrick was referring to in 2017, Scott Stringer, our then borough president, controller rather, did a POPs audit, and he went through every single POPs in New York. And we have a whole list of ours and where they're at, so we keep track of them, this just happens to
But
be an
they're
example. What? But they're not.
They're like disappearing.
They're
getting,
eroding.
they're slowly getting chopped up into little bits and like private.
Cookie crumbs,
They're piece by piece.
niblets.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's the update. We will give you hopefully in more of an update.
So-
Did that come out loud?
So
We have a letter.
Jason's gonna do some investigation.
Yeah, I'm
on
gonna
the
set up a
back end.
little like
Okay.
scaffolding of this thing, who we should talk to, and you
And
guys will
we'll
work
get
on
some
tone.
letters, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Alice. The last item.
Oh, this was.
We already did a resolution.
Why?
This was done.
Wait, hey,
Oh.
Patrick, can I just chime in on this in general? It's Laura. You know,
Laura, if you have to recuse from anything on this topic and you chime in, you must disclose,
Okay.
all right?
well, okay, but this is, I'm not talking specifically about this building, but I will say, you know, my firm did this big study of Water Street that led to letting the landlords do these enclosures of the arcades. And the reason that was determined is people were not using the arcades. They're dark, they're windy, they're not valuable open space. I just, as a landscape architect who spends her life creating good open space, these were not considered valuable open space. And so, you know, like, I'm not going to, I can't vote, whatever, but I'm just saying that I think if we're going to advocate for open space, we should we should put our energy into contiguous, sunny, usable open space, which is really what we need down here. And the reason that this happened was those buildings like needed to do everything they could to be able to have rentable office space. Like they were being threatened at the time by the World Trade Center site and Hudson Yards that were like sucking the tenants and the air out of, you know, and the vibrancy out of that street. And it's a really difficult place to have real estate, as we know, especially commercial real estate, as we know, because they're converting to residential. So I'm just giving context for this.
I would just like to make one point on that, Laura. Those developers, whether it was them or their predecessors, they received benefit as and we received an open space, even if it's an inferior one, we received. that
I agree
opposite
with you.
benefit. And if
I'm
they take
aware.
That benefit, they owe the community something in return.
Well, we should have them
And
give us
they're
something more meaningful in return. That's what I'm
Maybe-
saying is I think we should,
Not just,
you know,
not just take it away.
if the train has left the station on these because it's written into the zoning now, I think we should try to ask for something else, like for our schools or for our open space or for some other offset than to fight so hard for these negligible dark windy spaces. I just, you know,
I just want to clarify, we're not fighting today, Laura, for a negligible, dark, windy space. We're fighting for a plaza that was the beautiful A.E. By, and you were probably the only person who's ever heard of them, landscape that was a plaza, and that wasn't an arcade. So that was the purpose of today, was to let people know that a plaza, not an arcade, has been destroyed without anybody knowing about it at DCP, at the Downtown Alliance, or at this community board. That was the only reason we're bringing it up. We weren't debating arcades. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I just want to make sure that's clear.
okay, well, all right.
I actually agree with all three of you guys. I think that all makes sense. Like, and I didn't know the history of the whole Water Street thing.
I was just gonna say, cool flashback to 2016.
Seriously.
Here,
It was a charged room that night, a lot of broken.
All right, so can we, all right, thank you, Laura. We're gonna move on to item 3, which is the last mile facility text amendment, EIS scoping for the environmental impact statement. We've gotten notice that a hearing on the scoping for the EIS will take place on on May sixth. There's a public information session on April 24th, and if there are any comments that anybody, including community boards and public, want to submit, let's do so by May 16th. I know this is on here for a possible resolution, and not to stop on that.
Because
Did someone circulate something? I haven't seen this.
But we don't have the, I don't think anybody reviewed the text,
Ah.
but we certainly don't have the application out yet. This is really just at the draft EIS phase and really to just input on the scoping for the draft EIS.
I don't think anybody
I
knows. what
recuse
it
myself.
is.
There you go.
Yeah. Nobody has anything.
It's
He'd like
linked
to
to
put it
the
in.
agenda.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Sorry.
Link doesn't work anymore.
do the one you got email.
Yes.
Oh.
Since none of us did it,
No, it leads to the, zoning application portal site, where you can kind of see where this is in the process. Application hasn't even been filed yet for this, but this is it'll be a citywide zoning text amendment, sponsored by the Department of City Planning, the City Planning Commission, for citing, these last mile, delivery facilities. I'm not sure what the plan is, if that's one in every borough, one in every community district, I really don't. But, with all that information that we don't have, there is this meeting on the sixth, so.
All right, but everyone needs to kind of take a look at it, and part of the problem is it missed transportation. And yes, it's the beginning of the process here, but we want to provide any comment or input at all, right? It's a big thing. This is what the future of our city is about. And in Community Board 1 in specific, we have very unique streets down here.
But do we have an industrial, did we have one come into our way?
I do want to flag that it's only specific zones and we don't have a lot of manufacturing zones in the district.
We
Yeah,
have some.
Some
We
in
have some
Tribeca,
in
some
Tribeca.
Tribeca.
Manufacturing or a different?
Yeah, at one
Yes.
side A or, but most of the TMU.
Let me just read this out loud, right? It says, the New York City Department of City Planning, DCP, is proposing a citywide zoning text amendment that would introduce City Planning Commission, CPC, special permit for new parcel delivery facilities in M, special mixed use MX, and C8 districts. A proposed a parcel delivery facility is a type of distribution warehouse used primarily for unloading and sorting prepackaged goods and reloading those goods on vehicles certified by the FHWA, vehicle weight classes, et cetera, et cetera. Little to nothing of the following activities occur: extended inventory storage, picking, packing, wholesale distribution, or retail. Under this proposal, parcel delivery facilities would remain in use groups 9A and would become specifically determined a defined term within the zoning resolution. So it does seem fairly limited to just those districts, but we gotta understand more about what the actual text amendment will be. Anyway, again, follow the link if you want. Input to the zone, to the draft, yes.
can I just point out that I don't think it's very applicable to us because of two reasons. Number one is we do not have very many vacant, large scale spaces. Literally, the only one I can think of is 100 Gold at this moment that was capable of taking that. And even if we did, all of our streets are so incredibly narrow and difficult, and the corners so tight that the vehicles that are required to deliver these packages, I know that they go out on smaller vehicles, but to do the actual delivery, load in is like, we can't even get a damn Trader Joe's because the vehicles, the trucks for Trader Joe's to deliver are too big in our neighborhood. I feel like there's no way.
I feel like that's
They
probably right.
park in my neighborhood and they back-to-back truck and
Yeah.
do on-street.
Trader Joe's?
Whatever the food company is, it parks every Sunday. Come over. I've walked up to the truck and asked for a couple of things. It's not Trader Joe's, it's like a Bartlett Foods and like a lot of big, you know.
All right, anybody online? Otherwise, we're gonna
Okay.
end the meeting.
Thanks.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell me when the recording off, please, Sam?
Those are